So it's day 2 and I am back at it. When I left the day before, I only had one base cabinet to do, apart from that cabinet that has to be cut back right in the corner of the peninsula. Let's get started. So the very first cabinet I have to assemble is a 12-inch wide base cabinet sitting to the right of the stove. And as you have seen now a few times before, the procedure is exactly the same, so I'm not going to explain anything in details. When we watch me assemble this cabinet together, I can explain to you what's going to happen next, because on day 2, when all the cabinets has been hung on the rails and has been tied together, the next thing to do is to add fillers and panels. I do not start to add any doors and drawers normally before all the fillers and panel has been put on, because as I mentioned earlier, I would like to hide the screws for those fillers and panels behind the hinges. So putting on the hinges first is not a cool idea, and putting in the drawer hardware is the same. I like to hide these screws. And I think it's nice to get all the cutting and all the adapting out of the way before we start filling up those empty cabinet boxes. So what you can see I'm doing over here now at the back is that I'm tying that 18-inch base cabinet into the corner cabinet. The cabinet comes with a filler that's about 2 inches wide, and it is necessary to have that in between those cabinets, because otherwise, if you have drawers in that 18-inch base cabinet, you need clearance to the door of the corner cabinet to open those drawers. Otherwise, we will hit the handle when we open them. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm putting in that 2-inch filler, securing it from inside the 18-inch base cabinet and securing it from inside the corner cabinet as well. Now, I'm giving it a bit of thoughts about that corner cabinet, and what I'm doing now is I'm moving the legs under that base cabinet a tiny bit, because from standard there is a distance from the front of the cabinet to the legs that is different from the front legs to the rear legs. They are not sitting at the same distance from the edge, and since we have a cabinet that is facing the opposite way, as you can see here, compared to the other one, those legs has to be lined up when I put on the toe kick, otherwise the toe kick will be bent, and we don't want that to happen. I'm not still quite certain how I'm going to do that corner, that's why I'm giving it some thoughts, you can see, and when I'm not quite certain, I like to think a little bit about it. So while I do that, I will put the island support brackets together. In this installation we have 3 of those. Those are the brackets that will secure those cabinets that are not sitting on the wall into the floor. In this case, it's the 2 cabinets in the peninsula. I created this layout plan, so I added the 3rd one, because since we have a 12-inch cabinet sitting next to the stove by itself, it's not really a strong connection to the wall. So I have decided to put a island bracket under that cabinet as well. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting those 2 panels that are sitting to the left and the right side of the cabinet for the vent hood. The cabinets are 40 inches high, and the client do not wish to have any valance under the cabinets, and that means the panels have to be cut to 40 inches as well. They are 42.5 inches when we get them. So that's why I'm running out the door to my table saw and taking 2.5 inches off. Making sure that the cabinets sitting on the wall are plumb, I put in those 2 panels and secure them. And I put them on the tallest cabinet first always. And that means in this case I'm putting it on the 18-inch to the left. And when that's done, I'm tying in the vent cabinet to the panel, so it's being connected to that cabinet on the left. And then I go to the other side, to the 36-inch wide cabinet where we will have glass doors. I will take that panel, open it up, go outside, cut 2 inches off, and cut a corner off so there's clearance for the rail, and put it up in between those two cabinets. Then I will tie it into the 36-inch cabinet first, as you will see here on the inside, with a few screws, 3 of them. All 3 screws will be covered by hinges and a shelf, and I have a screw at the back as well. And when that is done, I am tying it into the vent cabinet on the right hand side. When I put in the panel, I'm using my pencil where I have a piece of masking tape approximately 5/8 of an inch from the end of the pencil. Then I don't need to measure with my measuring tape. I can just use my pencil and line up that piece of masking tape. So the panel will protrude 5/8 of an inch from the base, from the wall cabinet. Now, when that is in, what I'm doing now is securing that island bracket under the 12-inch cabinet. I'm not tying it into the cabinet just yet, just putting it into the floor, because I do not have an exact position for that cabinet before I have built the corner between the peninsula and the base cabinets on the wall, because I need to measure that we got 24 inches from that filler towards the cabinet, and I cannot do that before I have that filler put in, or a panel, whatever decision I decide to do. And so that's why I'm just checking, making sure now that this panel is horizontal. Oh, now we need one of those. That little tool I just showed you there is so I can screw through the bracket on the island kit into the floor without removing the cabinet. So I can reach in. It's a 90 degree, I don't know what's it called. It's a 90 degree device to put on my drill, so I can put screws in a very narrow space. Very convenient. Now that is in place, it's time to put in that big panel between the fridge cabinet and the cabinet sitting next to it. What I do now is I'm measuring the height, and here I am with my circular saw where I'm putting it on my crack jig. I have a jig I use for rib cuts, putting on my apron because I don't want all that MDF dust on my clothing. And here's the panel. I've been outside and it's really a cold day, so my hands are pretty cold here. Cutting off the corner of that cabinet because we got a rail running all the way up there at the back. And remember to take that blue foil off before you put it in, because you cannot get it off when the panel is in place. Even with a few inches, it is really sticking to the matte white cabinet. What I'm cutting off here at the back now, making a bit of sparks, is that the rail was protruding a little bit, so I put a blade on my oscillating tool that can cut metal and take off that tiny bit that was protruding. Now, sometimes you can measure as accurate as you want, but it could be that in this case that the wall is coming out a bit at the bottom. So in order to have the panel going all the way back to the wall and not be hanging on that extra layer of mud at the bottom of the drywall, I have to cut a little bit of the panel at the back. And when that is done, I can tie it into my base cabinet, which is level already, and I can tie it into my wall cabinet as I'm doing here, which I just checked whether it is plumb or not. I'm still not quite sure what I want to do, so when in doubt, do nothing. So that's probably what I'm going to do right now. Yeah, we can shift them around a bit, and what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the cabinets are sitting, in this case, parallel to the lines on the floor, because that is the visual baseline we have when we're standing on top of the cabinets and looking down to the floor to see that it's parallel with the floor. If the floor is a little bit off from the wall, it's better that the cabinets are in line with the floor, because that's what you see. Now I made a decision on that corner over there, so I'm cutting some panels and some fillers to build up, because the thing is we need a bit of clearance in the exact same way as we had over at the other corner cabinet in order for the doors and drawers to open. In this case, we also have a dishwasher that is opening out in front of the sink cabinet. So we want to make sure that it doesn't hit the handles on that cabinet. So we need a corner that's a minimum 2 inches to each side. And I will show you at the very end of the video how it looks. Right now, I'm just cutting a piece of panel and putting in between those 2 cabinets. One on the inside, and maybe that's one I'm going to get now. Yes, one for the outside. The one on the outside, I'm not securing that into the cabinets just yet because I want to cut that panel sitting on the back of the cabinet so I can align those 2 panels exactly to each other so it's protruding the same at the top and at the bottom. Now I'm taking the last 2 remaining island brackets and I'm screwing them into the floor with my angle device again. Give it a few screws that are not too long. They're only sitting in the laminate floor. They're not going all the way down to the subfloor, so they're still possible for expansion. And there's 2 of them. There's one where you can see a little bit of it there to the left of that sink cabinet, the one I'm at now, and then there's one that is sitting perpendicular to that one that is reaching under both cabinets. By doing it like that, we'll have a very strong connection into the floor, and those cabinets will not shift at all. So that's what I'm doing there on the floor. Now they are in place. Now I can put some screws through the cabinets into the island bracket. And before I do that, I have to make sure that my cabinets are horizontal, which is why I turn on my laser again and I have that green target so I can see that they're sitting at the exact same height as the rest of the base cabinets. Now I can make a mark on that piece of panel that is sitting between those cabinets and I can run out and cut off so it has the right length. Now we're getting to that very final cabinet that has to be cut down. I have been measuring how much I have to cut off in the depth of the cabinet. The width is fine. It's the depth that is the problem. So, and this is a full depth base cabinet, so it's cut down to 6 inches or so. That's all the room available we have, and now we can use a panel as a tabletop there for putting that cabinet together. On that cabinet I have cut away 2 out of 3 or 4 out of 6 of the lock nuts, so I have to use some regular screws to secure that cabinet so it doesn't come apart. And again I use my carpenter square to make sure that the corners are 90 degrees while I nail the back onto the frame. When that is all done, the cabinet is ready to be hung. I put 2 legs on it and let it stand. I did not put the brackets on for hanging it on the rail because there is no rail. And it's not important. I can tie it into the cabinet sitting next to it. And when that is done, I can put on the brackets. One of them is just for having a place to put my white plastic cover so there's no hole in the cabinet. And the other one, I can put the bracket on and I can secure it into the wall just to give that cabinet a bit of a firm hold onto the wall. That's what I'm doing right there. And now we just check that it's all plumb. After the cabinet is in, it's time to clean up a little bit again. I like to keep my work area relatively clean so I don't have tools lying all over. Now I'm adding some of the some of those twist lock nuts that holds the cabinet onto the rail and putting on the white covers. Now it's time to hang up the power supply and the cabling or the wires inside the vent cabinet to get them out of the way, which is what I'm doing now. Which I'm unplugging them and unwinding the cables. So they sit, and I tuck them away behind the cabinet, so they sit nice and out of the way. So when you open the cabinet, there's no wires to be seen except coming up from the upper corner into the power supplies. So, still thinking about that corner a bit. I only had some of it figured out. Now it's time to cut that panel that goes on the back. I will do that with my circular saw outside, which is why I put on my vest there to keep warm. It's a very cold day. And my apron. There we go. Panel has been cut. It's too high and it's too wide, but I have two perfect sides now, the one to the right and the one at the floor. I never cut a panel like that at the floor. Always cut it at the top. If you cut it at the floor and if you're washing your floors with water and there's a bit of spillage, then a particle ball like that will just swell, becomes thicker. That's what I mean. Now it has been cut to the height and it's been cut to the width. Now I can secure that into the cabinet. And I'm doing that from the inside with the screws that comes with the panels. The one with a flat pan head. They have the perfect length if you put them in the right position. It takes a bit of tinkering there to get that panel that sits between those two cabinets to be protruding at the exact same distance from the top to the bottom. But when that's done, I can secure that from the cabinet there where I'm sitting now, and also from the inside the sink cabinet. So we have a good firm connection between those two cabinets and that piece of panel. Now I can take my panel for the end of the cabinet. That is a 26 by 36 inches panel, and that just needs to be cut at the top. Making sure that it's sitting absolutely horizontal. I can measure from the top of the panel down to the rail and go cut off the excess material. And when that is done, I can secure that into the cabinet as well. So that's what I will be doing right now. Finding some screws, picking up my drill and my power tool. Putting on panels can be a bit of a pain because that's where it's not standard Ikea measurements. That's where you have to measure and cut and make sure that you do it right. Now I'll just go cut that filler that sits right there between that little cabinet and to the wall. In this case it's very easy because the wall and the cabinet are parallel, both of them are plumb. So I just cut a strip of panel material and put it in between. Give it a few screws and it is secure. Now, I've been giving that a bit of more thoughts, that corner, so I have an idea about what I want to do now. And I want to put a panel right there, as you can see I'm doing now. It's sitting on the side of that bulkhead post going up. So we have 24 inches inside between those, that panel and the 18-inch cabinet, which is the opening we need for the dishwasher. And when that panel has been put in, I can make two fillers sitting perpendicular to each other and put in that corner and close it all off nicely. A corner like this, there's There's many ways of doing it, and the way I do it here, I've done a few times, but there's always a bit of considering what is the best way to do it, because it could have been a cabinet sitting there where the dishwasher is in this layout plan, but and that would have made it a lot easier. But in this case, I do have the dishwasher, so that's what I have to work with. And as you will see at the very end of part 3 of this video, I think the result was really well. Once again, I'm doing a little bit of cleaning in between the various assembly jobs. I like to clean the cabinets clean. I like to know where my tools are, which is why I shift the tools around a bit. It takes a bit of time, but I like to keep good housekeeping in the workplace. That rail I mentioned earlier when I assembled the sink cabinet is the one I just put on top of the sink cabinet. That's the reinforced rail for the sink, and it needs to go right on top of the cabinet. I put the standard on when I assembled the cabinet because the reinforced one is actually very easy to bend in the horizontal plane, not in the vertical. So which is why I didn't put it on earlier, but it's on now, and now I take a few doors and use them as a workplace, work table. It's time to put on some doors. I had planned to finish the fillers around the fridge and the fillers in the corner, but what you cannot see is that outside it started to snow a lot, so I came out and there was about an inch of snow on my table saw, and of course we cannot have that, so I have to pack that away and do something different. And I hope it will not snow on the following day. So in order not to waste any time, I will start putting on some doors. Putting on doors on the Ikea cabinet is the easiest bit of installing such a kitchen, because it's a two-part hinge, and one part of the hinges go on the door and the other part is being pushed into the holes in the cabinet, and then you just screw in the screws and you click on the door. It goes really fast. There we have it. 2 doors has been installed, and I adjust them at the same time, so I am sure that they're sitting all lined up perfectly to each other. With those 2 doors on, I can bring out some boxes and start assembling some drawers. I have a video where I show how I'll assemble a drawer like that, and because I do it in the same way as the cabinet, I call it kind of top down, because whatever comes out of the box I'm dealing with. I'm not putting stuff aside and picking it up later. Whatever comes out of the box is being assembled and then put aside, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm assembling the metal box. What you'll see is that, why did you make 2 there, Lars? Well, I did that because I actually assembled a box that was too wide for that cabinet, or that door I was working on. I don't know if you saw that. I put on that hardware box to the right there, and it was actually an 18-inch, whereas the door I was having was a 15-inch. So they didn't fit. So I just put it aside, pick up the right one, and assemble that one instead. And then when that's done, I can continue on the one I started already, as you can see I'm doing now. 1 drawer in that cabinet, and now 1 drawer in is in the 18-inch as well. So we got 2 drawers in. In this kitchen, there's not a lot of drawers. There's actually only 5 of them. two cabinets. One has, well, there's 6 of them because one of them has a drawer inside the cabinet sitting behind the front, an interior drawer. So in this case, we have right there at the 18-inch, we have two 15-inch high drawers, and in the 15-inch, we have a 15, a 10, and a 5. And they're all assembled in pretty much the same way. The wider and the higher the door, the more screws and bits and pieces needs to go into the drawer front to make it stronger. But the principles are all the same. That little drawer front I'm assembling now is for the drawer that sits inside the 15-inch cabinet behind the 15-inch high front. A drawer in the drawer. Same principle. The only thing you need to pay attention to when you're assembling drawers is which holes to use in the drawer front, because there's a lot of them, and there's also 3 holes in those small brackets you can put on the drawer front, and you're only using 2 of them. So which 2 out of the 3 you'll use? I have made a video showing that, and I have a website where you can click your drawer configuration, and the link will be in the description, and there will be a link up in the corner of this video where you can go to my assembly of drawers, where I will explain in greater details how to do it. As you can see, we're almost done. This is the 10-inch drawer, and now there's only the 5-inch drawer left in the cabinet there. Now the 2 drawer cabinets have been built. It's time to build the Lazy Susan, which goes inside the corner cabinet. The first thing you want to do before you put in the Lazy Susan is take that part of the hinge that sits on the cabinet and put on that cabinet, because when you put in the Lazy Susan, there's no access to the lower part of that hinge, and that means you cannot put it in at all. So you will do that first. Put in that half part of the hinge at the bottom, and then you can start building the Lazy Susan. The Lazy Susan comes with an instruction, because there's 2 ways of building it, either for a cabinet that opens to the left or one that opens to the right. I can suggest that you look in the instruction, because then you don't have to do it more than once. The Lazy Susan has these 2 kidney-shaped shelves that can spin out and be pulled out as well. And they are exactly the same, the 2 of them, so you just do the assembly twice. There you go. The Lazy Susan is in, and the last thing on the agenda for this day is to put on the door of that cabinet. And that concludes the business for day number 2. And I do hope that the weather has improved for the following day, so I can be outside and cut the remaining fillers. See you on the next video.